Hey guys, Matthew Palumbo from Audiocontrol here, and on today's workshop, we are going to cover the latest features and updates to Audiocontrol's DM Smart DSP software. Let's dive right in. You know, the DM Smart DSP app and software has been around for a little while. We understand that. We've been doing DSP amplifiers and standalone DSPs for quite a few years now, and the software name has stayed the same. But let me tell you, a lot has changed. We are a company that really tries to listen to what our users, installers, and enthusiasts out there are looking for. And we really try to not only listen, watch the forums, listen to the comments out there, but also implement those changes whenever possible. And that's exactly what we've done with DM Smart DSP. This is the most feature-rich, robust, reliable software we've ever had. And that's saying a lot because the software was already quite reliable and had a lot packed in. But as times have changed, there's even more to love about DM Smart DSP. So with that being said, let's take a look at these four main categories of new features. All right, guys, so when it comes to the DM Smart DSP software, we really did try to listen to what you guys asked for. And there was a few little things that were just kind of quirks about the software, and we want to make sure that we address those in this latest update. So there's some small things, but they are big improvements that are quality of life improvements, let's call them. First of all, in the past, if you had ever had your USB cable get disconnected or the push to start ignition on the vehicle you're working on timed out and you lost power to the DSP, well, in the past, you lost all your work. If you hadn't recently saved all of your tune to a preset, you lost it all. That could be hours of tuning sometimes, unfortunately. So now what we've done is the DM Smart DSP software has kind of a buffer memory in the background, and it's constantly saving your work as you go. Now, it's not doing it so that you can see it. It's not saving it and overriding your presets. It's just kind of saving it in the background. So if I was to unplug the USB cable right now, or my coworker thinks he's doing me a favor and shuts off the ignition on the vehicle, thinking that I inadvertently left it on, what the software will do is when power is reconnected, it will pop up a window and say, hey, I see that power was disconnected. Do you want to continue where you left off? You say yes, and it does its best to pick up right where you left off. Now, depending on when that all happened, you may miss one or two little things, but you're not going to lose all of your work like you would have in the past. Now, another little improvement that we made was up in the top right-hand corner of the software here, where it actually shows the model. You'll notice right now it says DM810. That's because I am physically connected to a DM810. Now, if you're running the software in kind of test drive mode, where you've downloaded the software from our website, but you don't actually have an Audiocontrol product connected, what it'll do is it will actually give you a drop-down menu. You can click on all of our different DSP-enabled products and see what the software would look like if you were really connected. But it'll also say no product connected. This shows you that, hey, you are not truly connected to an actual product. You are demoing the software, and you will know that you're not actually really making changes. What would happen sometimes in the past is folks would think they were connected and making changes, but they wouldn't hear an audible difference in the vehicle, and then they would put all this time into tuning it, not really actually making any useful changes. So two things to look for. One, up in the top right-hand corner, you'll notice that little green LED. That little virtual LED shows you that you are connected to a product. The other key giveaway is that it says DM810, and I can't click here and change it. You'll notice there are no other models for me to select because it automatically recognizes which product it's connected to and reconfigures all the software and inputs and output tabs to show the proper amount for the product you are connected to and working with. So you cannot select it. If you can choose which product you're connected to, you aren't connected. That's just a quick tip. Now, one other thing that gets asked about a lot is, hey, I'm not in the US. I want to use different measurements for, say, my time correction and things like that. We've made all of this a little bit easier, and I'll show you what some of that looks like. In the Tools menu, you'll notice if you click here, you've got different languages. You also have your units for your change the output delay in inches, centimeters, or milliseconds. On these menus up at the top, this is also where we're going to do things like save our existing tune. Now, you can save the tune to the product really easily by clicking and holding on one of these four DSP presets. So if I've done all my changes and I want to make save it to the vehicle, so to speak, I would just click and hold on this big number 1 here. It'll pop up a little menu, and all I've got to do is say yes, okay? Now, let's say I do a lot of the same vehicle over and over again, though, and I want to save a basically copy of this entire tune and all the input and output configurations and all that. Well, now it's really easy to do. Up here in File Manager, I just go to File Manager and then go to Save As. Once I do that, it's going to say, do you want to save? You know, hey, basically this is telling you haven't saved in a while. If I say yes, now it gives me a choice here to go in and actually save my file. So I could go ahead and name this the year and model of the vehicle, or maybe the system configuration, something like that. Audiocontrol D6.1200 with PNW speakers and spike subwoofers, whatever the case may be. That's where you'll do it. So those are just some of the small stability improvements and kind of user experience improvements that we've made. One other one I'm going to show you before we move on is in the output view. You'll notice right here it says signal summing now. This makes a whole lot more sense. In the past, it used to say output summing, and it's a little bit tricky because actually you're summing your inputs. And we'll dive into more of that and what else has changed in this screen here next. All right, so here in the output view, this is where the majority of the changes really happened in this software. And again, we really tried to listen and implement a ton of the changes that you all asked for. So one of the first things that you may notice is here in the crossover section, no longer is there just 12 and 24 dB Linkwitz-Riley. We also offer the Butterworth 18 dB option on both the high and low end of the crossover. So you've got both. Now, if you aren't super familiar with our crossover section, the way that this works is you can either click in this space here and actually type in the number that you want, or you can just drag the little slider and choose your frequency that way. So let's say on channel 1, 2 output, let's say this is going to a set of tweeters. I want this to be maybe right around, say, I don't know, 3000 hertz on up. Well, I've just set that up. Now on the low end side here at 3000 hertz, I've got an 18 dB Butterworth. Maybe I want it to be a 12 dB Linkwitz-Riley. And on the top end of the crossover, you have a bypass option. For those of you that haven't used the software in a while or haven't checked it out in a bit, this didn't always used to be the case. It used to go from 20 to 20. Well, we don't want to limit someone that's trying to do a high-res system and wants to play above 20,000 hertz, so we now offer the bypass option. If you slide this down, you'll see what I mean. So right now we would have a crossover that plays from 3000 to 17.1. If I want this to go all the way up, I just keep sliding and you'll see it hits bypass. Now the same thing is true for my other channels. Let's say channels 7 and 8 are assigned to a pair of subwoofers. I can do the same thing on the low pass. So I'm going to drag this one all the way down, and again, you'll see it goes to bypass. So if you don't want any sort of subsonic filter or anything like that, you don't want anything limiting your super low bass because you have the woofers and the power and the enclosure to handle it, okay, great. Well, you can drag this down to bypass, and now we are not limiting anything on the low end. So if you're just doing a regular subsystem and maybe I want, I don't know, right around 80 hertz on down, all right, well, let's call that close enough for right now. There we now have an 80 hertz down to bypass low pass filter. Maybe I don't have a super amazing subwoofer setup and I do want to limit everything below 25 hertz. Well, now I have a 25 hertz at 24 dB, basically setting up a subsonic filter. So pretty straightforward. One of the other cool features in this section that, again, not rocket science, but a lot of folks did ask for, was the ability to flip the phase or polarity on each channel individually. So now you'll notice in our delay section, we do have the ability to, of course, delay every channel for time correction, but you also have the ability to flip each speaker individually or each channel individually. So if I click 180, I now just put the right channel, channel 8 out of my 7 and 8 pair is now 180 degrees out of phase. Now it's back in phase with the left channel. Pretty straightforward. Now, when it comes to the signal summing section, I mentioned this earlier a little bit. In the past, this used to be called output summing. And really what you're doing here is it's very, very simple. People sometimes overthink it and overcomplicate it. And that is you're basically just choosing where does the signal come from for this output. So let's look at channel 1, 2 out. Channels 1, 2 out are fed by which inputs? Well, right now, channel 1, 2 out is fed by input 1, 2, but it's also fed by input 7 and 8. There's a reason for that. Input 7, 8 in our software is shared. So it is not only a high-level input, low-level input, it's also your Bluetooth chip if you've got the AC-BT24 laying around, or it could even be your optical or coax digital input. So that last input channel is basically shared. So just kind of keep that in mind. So in this case, I'm going to leave them alone, but let's say I needed to do signal summing. Let's say I did bring in, my input 1, 2 was the factory dash speaker, input 3, 4 was the factory door speaker, and for my output 1, 2, I wanted to sum those together. All I've got to do is make sure that these two are highlighted. I'll just turn this one off for a moment. And now what we've done is we've taken the inputs from 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, we've combined them together, and that is what is feeding output 1 and 2. So really, it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it and once you kind of understand how that all works. Now, the other side of this is as we scroll down in this software a little bit, you're going to see a few different sections here. Of course, your remote volume, your ACR3, so on and so forth. A lot of this is unchanged, but this section here where it says AccuBase. Now, we've had AccuBase for a long time. AccuBase is a very useful feature, but what you don't see here is one of our new features that falls under this crossover and phase category, and that is the all requested all pass filters. Yes, Audiocontrol has the ability to do all pass filters. In fact, if I click the Tools menu, we can go down and enable all pass filters. You'll now notice that AccuBase shrunk to half the size of the screen rather than taking up this entire row. It's now 2 columns in that row. AccuBase is the left, all pass is the right. You'll notice that for each channel, right now we are on channel 1 of those 2. So channel 1 and 2 is the pair I'm working on. I'm only working on channel 1 right now, and I have up to 2 filters per channel. So on a DM810, that's right, you could have up to 20 all pass filters if you wanted them. You have your choice between a first order or a second order. Second order will, of course, give you the ability to adjust your Q as well as your frequency, where first order is just going to give you a frequency adjustment. And again, just like all of our settings, you can either drag the slider or you can click in the box and type in a number if that's what you wish to do. So I'll just type in a random number, hit enter. Oop, I didn't do this right. Let's go 1350. There we go. So now we've got the closest frequency to it in the EQ down below. I've now got selected there in my all pass. Now on channel 2, I've gone over here, and again, I could enable a first order at 1 kilohertz, and I could enable a second order as well at 90 hertz. So you can again have up to 2 filters per output on a DM810 or any of the D series amplifiers, something that a lot of you asked for and a lot of people complained that Audiocontrol did not have. Now, when it comes to the EQ section, again, this is something that, of course, we've got an EQ, but there are some common misconceptions, and that is, one, that Audiocontrol does not have a parametric EQ. In fact, this latest version of the software absolutely added parametric. So you'll notice here in the top right corner, you have GEQ, which is what it comes defaulted to. Here's all of your graphic EQ bands. I can simply click on one and drag it up to what I want or drag it down how I want. I can also use the arrows to skip between these. So you'll notice I'm not using a mouse cursor. I'm now using the up and down keys on my keyboard to make these adjustments. No problem. But what about a parametric EQ? Well, you'll notice there's now PEQ. So if I click PEQ instead, I've got a 10-band parametric EQ. And I have some choices here. Again, I can just grab the blue bubble and drag it to the frequency that I want. So rather than selecting, these specific frequencies at the bottom, like a graphic will do, for those that don't know the difference between graphic and parametric, graphic is going to have pre-selected bands. So you'll notice down at the bottom in a graphic EQ, you have 25, 31.5, 40 hertz, 50 hertz, so on and so forth. In parametric, I could assign all of these 10 bands down in this area here if that's what I needed to do. Most of the time, that's obviously not going to be the case. But let's take our lowest band here, and I'm going to drag it right around here, 54 hertz. I can now drag it down, and I can adjust the Q. So the Q is going to be little red dots, and I can either drag these in for a little bit of a sharper narrower, I should say, band, or I can drag them out for a much wider band. And you can see how that affects with that gray line right there. You can see how that affects each frequency. So I'm going to drag those back. Now you can also do this up here in this portion of the software where it says 2.88Q. I can also slide this with this little blue and silver slider if I don't want to try to drag those little red dots, because we can make it super, super narrow if that's what I'm looking for. So you've got as low as 0.25 and as high as 30. Now that goes for every band in here. So again, these are at default, they're kind of spaced out approximately evenly to start, but maybe I don't want them that way. Maybe I need another band of EQ down here, and I need a boost, and I want it narrow. And the next band I'm going to put way up here, and I want it way boosted and super wide. You get the idea. You can do just about everything with Parametric. Now, don't forget, in our software, you also are getting an overlay of the RTA in real time. So this is the actual signal going out. You'll also notice that, hey, I made a bunch of mistakes here, and I don't know what I'm doing. I can just click flat and hit yes, and it's just going to reset everything back to flat for me. No problem. Now, if you can't drag these little blue bubbles to exactly where you need them, you'll also notice this little white box down at the bottom. You can also click here and actually type in a number as well, and it'll jump right to that number for you. So I just typed in 150, hit enter, and it put it right at 150 hertz for me. If I meant to do 1500, no problem, 1500, and hit go. There we go. And there is my 1.5 kilohertz band with my adjustable Q. Now, one other thing in the EQ section of our software that a lot of folks don't realize is that we do have individual EQs for left and right channels. Again, this is something that has changed over time, and it's something that a lot of folks just assumed we didn't have. So over here in the EQ section, you'll see it shows a 1, a 2, and a 1-2. Well, this is because we are currently manipulating channels 1 and 2 outputs. So if I want to EQ the channels together, I leave it just as it is. If I want to EQ them separately, however, I'm just going to click on channel 1. I'm now only EQing channel 1. So let's make some changes here just to make it identifiable. So we've got a big peak and a big valley. All right, there we go. And then let's go over to channel 2, and I'll make some other changes here, just again, so that it's very identifiable. And you'll notice channel 1, channel 2, two totally different EQs for each individual channel. So no problem. You can EQ every tweeter, every mid-range, every mid-bass individually to your liking, and it's very simple to do. All right, so this last feature is one that nobody was expecting, I don't think anyway, and this is just kind of a really cool feature, and it's part of Audiocontrol being part of the Stinger Amp Global family of brands. Stinger has some amazing infotainment source units called Horizon. We have a Horizon 10 and a Horizon 12 currently, and that is, as you might guess, a 10-inch screen or a 12.8-inch screen. Now, what's really cool though is on these Horizon units, they actually come preloaded with DM Smart DSP right on the source unit. Now, the Hideaway chassis for these screens does have 3 USB ports. One of those USB-As you would take and plug into your Audiocontrol DSP amplifier or standalone DM810 or even DM608 DSP. Doesn't really matter when it was manufactured, it's still compatible. The beautiful part is the software runs right on the screen. So no laptop, no tablet, no smartphone necessary. You can do everything I just showed you and more. This is a full version of the software, not watered down, not 70% of the features or anything like that. It is 100% of the features. A full version of the software lives on that head unit. So you can go in, make your adjustments, tune your system, do everything you need to do with the DSP right from your big in-dash beautiful HD 10 or 12.8-inch display. It is so fast, so easy, and super, super reliable. You're never dealing with Bluetooth because it's a hardwired connection. And you know what? It works every single time. Now, the question I usually get with that is, hey, Matt, what about software updates? What about if there's an update? How do I do that if I'm not using a laptop? Well, they built in a provision for that into the head unit as well. So yes, you could actually even update your DM Smart DSP software right through the Horizon head unit. As an added bonus, we even built in an app called DM Control. Let's say you're setting this up for a customer. You go into DM Smart DSP, maybe you set a password on the software so the customer can't get in and make some adjustments adjustments, or his friend who knows a lot about car audio can't go in and make some adjustments. But on top of that, you can actually go into the software of the Horizon unit and actually turn off the DM Smart DSP app when you're done. Now it doesn't even show up in the menu. But what if you want to give the customer a little bit of control? You want to give them the ability to switch sound profiles or presets. No problem. This is where DM Control comes in. DM Control is a consumer-facing app, meaning all it gives them is the ability to switch between the 4 DSP presets as well as a level control. Now that level control can be assigned in the DM Smart DSP software, and it can be set up as, well, most commonly a sub-level control, but it could also control the volume of, say, center channel or rear speakers for when there is or isn't rear passengers, things like that. The options are endless. You can assign that virtual level controller knob to anything you want in the DM Smart DSP app, save it to a preset, and now the DM Control app will not only give them control over those levels, but also any titles that you type in. If you name your presets, single seat, 2-seat, party mode, whatever you want to name them, those names from the DM Smart DSP app will transfer over and show up in DM Control. It's really pretty cool, and it's something that nobody else has. If you want to take this latest version of DM Smart DSP for a spin, even if you don't have any audio control product, be sure to download a copy of it from the Audiocontrol website. And like I mentioned earlier, you do not have to be connected to our products for it to work. You can still get about 90% of the options in the kind of demo version of the software. Now, there are a couple of little details that won't show up unless it's plugged into a product, things like auto EQ and a few other little tidbits, but mostly you can get a feel for the software just by downloading it and taking it for a quick spin. For more information on DM Smart DSP or any of the Audiocontrol DSP amplifiers or standalone DSP products, be sure to check out audiocontrol.com. I'm Matthew Palumbo from Audiocontrol. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.